In the throes of Mao Zedong's revolution, the church in China faced its greatest test. Did it hold the line or did it falter?
Welcome to Where Was the Church? I'm Caleb, and today we journey to China during Mao Zedong's Communist Revolution. Pastor Billy Dawes will lead us through this turbulent period, asking where the church stood as the storm of Mao's ideological battle raged.
The year was 1949. Mao Zedong and the Communist Party of China had seized control, marking the beginning of a new socialist era. Religion was viewed with suspicion, and the church's allegiance was questioned. In 1950, the Three South Patriotic Movement was introduced, a state-sanctioned initiative that called churches to be self-governing, self-supporting, and self-propagating. Ostensibly about autonomy from foreign influence, it was in reality a tool for control. As Mao's policies unfolded, churches were pressured to align with communist ideology. The People's Daily, the party's official newspaper, published articles describing religion as a tool of imperialism. Pastors and church leaders were scrutinized, their sermons monitored. Some, fearing for their congregations and their lives, complied with the state's demands. In cities like Beijing and Shanghai, churches displayed portraits of Mao alongside religious symbols. The real test came with the Cultural Revolution, starting in 1966. This was a brutal campaign to eradicate the Four Olds' old customs, culture, habits, and ideas. Churches were targets. The Red Guards, a student-led paramilitary group, vandalized places of worship, destroyed Bibles, and humiliated believers in public spectacles. By 1967, many church buildings were repurposed or demolished. Services went underground, often held in secret within homes. Meanwhile, the official church, the Three South Church, continued to operate under state directives, but at a cost. Their sermons often echoed party propaganda more than the gospel. In this oppressive atmosphere, individual stories of resilience and faith emerged, like that of Wang Mingdao, a prominent Chinese pastor and evangelist. Wang had been a vocal critic of the Three South Patriotic Movement, refusing to allow the state to dictate his teachings. In 1955, his stance led to his arrest on charges of counter-revolutionary activities. Wang was sentenced to life in prison, though he would serve 23 years. His unwavering faith made him a symbol of the underground church, and his writings, smuggled out of prison, inspired countless believers. Another notable figure was Samuel Lam, or Lin Shenggao, a pastor based in Guangzhou. Lam was arrested in 1955 for refusing to join the Three South Church, spending over 20 years in labor camps. Upon his release, Lam resumed his ministry, holding services in his home that grew exponentially. By the 1980s, his house church numbered in the thousands, even as government spies infiltrated his congregation. Lam's church became a refuge for those seeking spiritual truth outside state control, and his life story spread far beyond China's borders. While the Cultural Revolution ravaged religious structures, the underground church became innovative in its survival. Believers met in small groups, often in rural areas where government scrutiny was less intense. They used coded language to communicate meeting times and locations, and memorized scripture to avoid carrying incriminating written materials. This era saw the rise of barefoot pastors, itinerant preachers who traveled from village to village, spreading the gospel under constant threat of arrest. In 1976, Mao Zedong's death marked the end of the Cultural Revolution, but the scars on the church and its people remained. His passing, however, also opened a window for change. Deng Xiaoping's rise to power brought about the opening up and reform policy, which began to ease restrictions on religious practices. By 1979, the Three Self patriotic movement was reestablished, and some church buildings were returned to their congregations. Yet the underground church, wary of state control, continued to flourish alongside the sanctioned church. The 1980s saw significant growth in Christianity in China, partly due to the resilience of those who had kept the faith alive during the darkest days. House churches multiplied, and the Bible became more accessible with the establishment of the Amity Printing Company in Nanjing in 1987. This joint venture between Chinese Christians and international partners began printing millions of Bibles, distributing them across the country, and further solidifying the underground church's influence. Despite the loosening of some restrictions, the government maintained a tight grip on religious activities. House churches, though numerous, operated in a gray area of legality. The authorities often harassed these gatherings, conducting raids, arresting leaders, and imposing fines. Yet the underground church remained undeterred, adapting to the challenges with a blend of caution and boldness that would define its character in the decades to come. In the late 1980s and into the 1990s, the Chinese government's approach to religion fluctuated between moments of tolerance and harsh crackdowns. The Tiananmen Square protests in 1989, though primarily political, cast a shadow over all forms of dissent, including religious gatherings. In the aftermath, the government increased surveillance on religious activities, wary of any organized movement that could challenge its authority. Despite this, Christianity continued to spread rapidly, particularly among university students and intellectuals disillusioned by the political climate. One such intellectual was Yuan Zhiming, a former Marxist philosopher turned Christian leader. After the Tiananmen Square incident, Yuan fled to the United States, where he became a vocal advocate for religious freedom in China. He co-founded the China Soul for Christ Foundation, producing documentaries and literature that were smuggled back into China, fueling the underground church's growth. Meanwhile, in rural provinces like Henan and Anhui, house churches thrived, driven by charismatic leaders like Brother Yun, known as the Heavenly Man. Yun's ministry was marked by miraculous accounts and daring escapes from authorities. His autobiography, published in 2002, detailed his experiences of imprisonment and torture, yet spoke of a faith that thrived under persecution. His story, translated into multiple languages, resonated globally, highlighting the underground church's vibrancy and resilience. As China entered the new millennium, the government continued its campaign to assert control over religious practices. The regulations on religious affairs implemented in 2005 sought to standardize religious operations, requiring all religious groups to register with the state. This move targeted unregistered house churches, putting them at risk of closure and their leaders at risk of arrest. Yet, the underground church network, deeply embedded in both urban and rural communities, proved difficult to dismantle. It adapted by becoming more decentralized, with small groups meeting in secret, often using technology to communicate discreetly and share religious materials. The 2008 Beijing Olympics brought the world's attention to China, and the government made a show of moderation. However, this period also saw an increase in crackdowns on unregistered religious activities as the authorities feared that international exposure might embolden domestic dissent. Despite these challenges, the underground church continued to grow, maintaining its commitment to spreading the gospel and supporting its members under trying circumstances. By 2010, it was estimated that there were tens of millions of Christians in China, a testament to the enduring legacy of those who had kept the faith alive through decades of adversity.
Did you know that joy can be chosen even when circumstances remain unchanged? In Yet, I Will Rejoice, Habakkuk's Guide to Handling Any Problem. Pastor Billy Dawes delves into the prophet Habakkuk's wisdom. It's a powerful resource for finding faith and joy amidst trials, much like our topic today. You can find it on Amazon. The link is in the description and pinned comment. As always, we cherish your prayers. If this podcast has encouraged you, please consider financially support the ministry. See the comment below to find out how you can give. Now let's get back to the podcast.
Despite the overarching pressure, a remnant of believers held fast. The underground church grew, meeting in secret locations, whispering hymns, and sharing scriptures written from memory. They faced arrest, yet their resolve was steely. Stories from Henan province, where believers continued to gather at great risk, remind us of their courage. One figure stands out, Wang Mingdao, a prominent pastor who refused to yield to the demands of the Three South Church. Arrested in 1955, he spent over 20 years in prison. His writings, smuggled out, inspired many to remain steadfast. When asked why he would not submit, he simply pointed to the truth of the gospel. Matthew 10:28 KJV reads, "And fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell." This verse was a powerful reminder to those believers the soul's allegiance was to God alone, not to any earthly power. Now, let's delve deeper into some of the other brave souls who stood firm during these turbulent times. Take, for example, Samuel Lam, or Lin Shangao, as he was known in Mandarin. Born in 1924 in the Guangdong province, Lam was another stalwart of the underground church. He was first arrested in 1955, the same year as Wang Mingdao, and spent over 20 years in labor camps. His crime? Simply refusing to merge his church with the state-controlled Three South patriotic movement. After his release, rather than retreating into silence, Lam resumed his ministry with renewed vigor, leading an unregistered house church in Guangzhou. His home became a place of worship where believers gathered in secret, risking their safety for a chance to hear the word. Another noteworthy figure was Alan Yuan, arrested in 1958. Yuan, like many others, faced the charge of counter-revolutionary activities simply because of his faith. He was sentenced to 22 years in a labor camp in Heilongjiang, one of the coldest provinces in China. Despite the harsh conditions, he remained a source of strength for those around him. His resilience was not just about enduring physical hardship, but about maintaining spiritual strength, encouraging his fellow prisoners, and continuing to preach whenever he could. The story of the Jesus family is another remarkable chapter from this era. Founded by Jing Dianying in the 1920s, this Christian communal group was initially inspired by the teachings in Acts about the early Christian community. As the communists took power, the Jesus family faced severe persecution. Their communal farms were seized, and members were dispersed and jailed. Despite this, the spirit of the Jesus family lived on, with members continuing to meet in secret, supporting one another, and sharing resources as best they could. In the face of such adversity, the underground church had to be incredibly resourceful. Bibles, considered contraband, were smuggled across borders, hidden in shipments of goods, or painstakingly copied by hand. In some cases, entire congregations might share a single Bible, passing it from person to person, each member memorizing as much scripture as they could before passing it on. These Bibles were treasures, and losing one was a devastating blow. Yet for all the risks, the underground church's numbers swelled. By the late 1970s, estimates suggested millions of believers were meeting in secret across China. Their gatherings were often small, in homes, forests, or mountain caves, and always under the threat of discovery. But their growth was a testament to their faith and their commitment to each other in a society that demanded total allegiance to the state. It wasn't just the leaders and adults who showed remarkable bravery. Young people, too, played a vital role in sustaining the church. Youth groups formed, often led by enthusiastic, albeit inexperienced, young leaders who were eager to learn and share the good news. These groups became training grounds for future leaders, keeping the faith alive across generations, despite governmental attempts to stamp it out. As the Cultural Revolution ended and China began opening up in the late 1970s, the church emerged battered but unbroken. The underground network had not only survived but thrived, with believers who were deeply committed and whose faith had been tempered by years of persecution. The resilience of these believers continues to inspire the global church today, reminding us of the profound power of faith in the face of unimaginable odds. Before we go, 3 questions. What do we learn? The church in Mao's China teaches us the cost of compromising faith for safety or acceptance. 1 Corinthians 10:11 says, "Now all these things happened unto them for ensamples nighness, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come." How do we make sure we never repeat it? The church must never compromise its teachings for state approval, as seen in the 3 South patriotic movement. John 16:33 reads, "These things I have spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world." What do we do to strengthen the body? We can strengthen the body by committing to prayer for our persecuted brothers and sisters. James 5:16 advises, "Confess your faults one to another, and pray one for another, that ye may be healed. The effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much."
Thank you for joining us on Where Was the Church? May today's exploration of the church in Mao's China encourage you in your walk of faith. Don't forget to follow the show for more episodes. Until next time, this is Caleb signing off.